Welcome, and thank you for joining our McAllister family to discuss the important topic of anti-racism and inclusion in the workplace. My name is Andrew Koftiel, class of 2001, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm joining you today as the incoming chair of the Alumni Board's Diversity Working Group. As a member of the Alumni Board, we strive to connect the alumni community to McAllister and to each other as we continue our lifelong relationships as alumni. It is our practice to begin programs with the land acknowledgement. We would like to take a moment to honor the fact that McAllister is situated on Dakota land. This is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota people who were forcibly exiled from the land because of aggressive and persistent settler colonialism. We make this acknowledgement to honor the Dakota people, ancestors and descendants, as well as the land itself. McAllister sits near the Bidote, the sacred meeting point of the Mississippi and Minnesota rivers. In the words of Reverend Jim Bear Jacobs, Bidote is a place of genesis and genocide, both realities alive in the land at once. We recognize that this acknowledgement itself is not enough and only serves as a first step towards decolonization. Please take a moment to recognize that you too, wherever you are on Indigenous land, and share that in the chat window. Tonight, we are excited to host a discussion on anti-racism and inclusion in the workplace. The topic is personally important to me because as a gay man of Puerto Rican and Jewish descent, I have faced and witnessed overt and covert racism and discrimination in the workplace as an applicant, as a hiring manager, and as a colleague, and I know firsthand how disempowering, hurtful, and detrimental this reality can be. It is my personal goal to ensure that the places I work and affiliate with are proactive in addressing the issues of race and racism, and in creating an atmosphere and culture that is as conscious and inclusive as possible. Before we begin, we will hear from Moriel Storms, class of 2003, and after that, we will share some additional information to help you get started with our small groups and move into the heart of our time together. Moriel is my former work-study colleague in the admissions office in 1999 and is currently the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for the Western region of TCF Bank, where she develops diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies based on employee feedback, community partnerships, and data analytics. In her role, she focuses on programs that elevate DEI awareness while creating optimal career opportunities and engagement for diverse talent within the organization. In addition to her role at TCF, she serves on the executive board as the VP of Operations for the Twin Cities chapter of the National Black MBA Association. Moriel graduated from McAllister with a degree in Spanish and received her MBA from St. Thomas Opus College of Business with a focus on HR management. She is also a National Diversity Council certified professional. In her spare time, Moriel enjoys learning, especially deepening her language skills, and gardening. Welcome, Moriel.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I always laugh because we had some good times in admissions, multicultural admissions. And like we were saying before, I'm actually still in contact with several people that I've recruited to McAllister. So there's a special place in my heart with McAllister. And I'm just going to share my screen here. If you can all see it, can you all see it? Not yet. Here we go. Now we can see it. Perfect. Again, my name is Moriel Storms. I use she, her pronouns. And this topic is just something that is who I am in the first place. And so I'll talk a little bit about myself, some of my experiences at work, and then leave you with an action item or maybe an influence to some action items that you can do as well in your workplace. I always like to start with my family because my family truly is the inspiration around who I am, what made me who I am. I come from an incredibly multiracial, multicultural family, and that's actually a photo from, well, pre-COVID days, a wedding. We're all related, by the way, and we all look different. And so growing up, none of my siblings looked like me, and that's okay. They were still my family. And they provided me with this kind of sense of what really the world could be. And so I try and recreate that because it reminds me of home, either in my personal life or in the workplace. And it's actually helped me in the DEI work that I do today. I also have to give a lot of credit to my friends. I seek out people that are unique. I find them fascinating. They share experiences that I might not have experienced, but I love to hear their stories of how they grew up in Jamaica, how they grew up on the Mohawk Reservation or the Navajo Dene Reservation. And it really influences how I see the world. And so I stay in contact with them because they add value to my life and my experiences and actually challenge me to try something new as well. And that brings me to my work. As Andrew had said, I've been actually in DEI work for a long time. I focused on the recruitment piece. A lot of the times, organizations really struggle with that recruitment. I can't find people of color, I can't find women, and you name the industry. And I'm like, that's not true because I know that there are people out there. Are you really looking in the right places? Are you using the right tactics to attract people? Or are you even trying to pipeline people at a younger age and get them excited about your industry? And so I was always fascinated by that. And again, trying to recreate that family atmosphere. And then finally, I go out in the world and experience things that are beyond what I've already known. I've been to the Arctic Circle. I've been to countries where they don't speak English. I try and learn that language because it's so much more fun for me if I can make that connection with other people. Now, seeing that I'm talking to other McAllister alumni, all of you are probably going, yep, that's me. I have a diverse family. I come from a diverse background. I've explored the world. In fact, probably multiple people on this call have explored many other countries, tasted different foods beyond what I've even experienced. So then it goes back to, okay, so now how do we as a collective kind of bridge the gap to others in our industries? And so I thought about the question of kind of reeling it in. How do we know that we're inclusive in a personal way, in our workplace? And then there's a bit of both. And I thought to myself, and actually maybe all of you can do this at the same time. And if you've already done this, you know where I'm going. But take a piece of paper and write down the top 10 closest friends, not family, closest friends, people that you would hand the car keys to, you would allow them in your house overnight while you went, they watch your dog, they watch your kids, and then go through and say, are those people exactly like me? Are they the same age, the same race, same gender identity, socioeconomic status? And so that's one of the things that I kind of go through in my personally being inclusive. And I have to give a shout out. I have a picture up from my wedding day. There are 3 people in that video or in that photo that are MAC alumni, and they are still close friends to this day. And actually, there's more MAC McAllister alumni that were at my wedding. I couldn't find the photos. Please forgive me if you're on the line. But it means something. They add value to my life, and I continue to meet with them because I find that I'm a better person because of them. Now, going to the workplace, the other thing I was thinking about is sometimes we get so focused on our work, our day-to-day lives, that we don't seek out other people's opinions. Or maybe we think we can do it all. I know I'm guilty of that. But what I have been trying to do, and this actually helps with being more inclusive, is okay, I'm really good at recruitment, but maybe I'm not very good at budgeting or finance. So I actually reach out to people that are better at my weaknesses so that I create a team that is more inclusive and actually works incredibly well to get the task, the project done. And that's one more tip on how to be more inclusive in your workplace. The other thing too is I cannot stress enough, and maybe that's just my background and my bias in the HR perspective, is really go back and evaluate your hiring and promotional practices. There's hidden biases that we all have. I know I have my biases. I'm constantly trying to work through it. And again, that's why it's so handy to have other people around you to tell you pretty much when you're wrong or when there's another way of doing things. You don't have to take the same path. And so are you looking at the hiring practices of your workforce? Are you going to the same career fair or are you mixing it up? Because that might change things. So that's one other tip I have on how to be more inclusive in your workplace. And of course, I added the both because, the whole like make sure you're surrounded by people that are different from you. It applies to work and personal. And I think that has helped me a ton. Creating more trusted advisors. And by the way, I'm not saying, oh, I'm missing someone in finance or I'm missing an opinion of an African American. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and seek that person because that's going to kind of frighten them and be like, am I being tokenized? Why are you adding me? But be authentic. I always say that because sometimes, people will approach me and I can tell it's a check the box. Oh, I've always wanted someone, that's mixed race for that opinion. And then they move on. And I'm like, well, did you really get to know me? So really sit down and get to know them, have lunch with them. If they're sitting by themselves, get to know them. In a networking event, instead of just talking to the same people in your department, reach out to someone new. Or set up, if you're afraid or kind of don't like that idea of large group settings, always do the one-on-one virtual coffees nowadays. That also helps as well. And then for me, the other piece of diversity, equity, and inclusion is leading by example. Some of the other experiences that I seek out, and actually I have the photo down there. I joined the Target Red Dragons. It's a dragon boat racing team. This was a while ago. And honestly, someone came up to me and said, do you want to join the dragon boat racing? And I said, why not? Never done it before. I love that sport now. And when we get back to a more normal society post-COVID, you'll probably see me in those dragon boats on Lake Fallon in St. Paul here coming up in the summer. The other piece too, I would emphasize is exercise in your empathy gym. And what I mean is try and understand what it's like to be in that other person's shoes. For example, the other day I noticed a small child's toy in a parking lot. And I was like, oh, a child, they must have missed their toy. They must be devastated. And I stop my car, it's running as it's going. I go and I put it next to the door, which by the way, there was a camera on me. Didn't think anything of it. I get back in the car and I go, oh my gosh, if I was a different color, if I had a hijab, what would that security guard have thought when I was putting that toy down? And I need to recognize that the way I look, my gender identity, it does have, it gives people perceptions. And I need to be aware of that privilege. Just as all of us have to be aware of our privilege. And how do we get to know what it's like to be in someone else's shoes? And again, that's having those closer connections with people that are different from you. And then that kind of filters in, you feel it in your gut, that empathy of, oh, what is it like to be a Black man walking down the street or in a grocery store? It's going to be different. And how do I make that change so that everybody has that same experience? The other thing too, I noticed when I was doing HR consulting, I worked for different industries. I did healthcare, I did technology, and different industries have different biases. And so you have to kind of adjust to your approach. And of course, don't get discouraged because everybody changes at different rates. Sometimes they are defensive about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're set in their ways. They don't see anything wrong with it. They don't recognize their privilege. And so you have to really kind of walk with them at their own pace to bring them along and make sure that they know that they are included in the conversation, even if maybe at first they didn't think they were. And I'll leave you with one story that I have, and it is around all of us being advocates for someone, even if the person isn't in the room and even if the person never knows. I was working for a technology manufacturing company, and we were going to hire a technician, right? Someone that goes from location to location when our widgets or technical things go wrong. So all we really needed was someone that was tech savvy. We interviewed several people, and there was one in particular that I remember. I thought he was a great candidate. I'll make up his name. His name was Juan Gonzalez, let's just say. And as we're going through all the different candidates, so it was another HR person, the hiring manager, and another technician. We're going around and saying the pros and cons of each of our candidates. And we get to Juan, and the technician, who was to my left of, or to the left of me, simply blurted out, "Well, I think he's Mexican." Now, why does that matter? It doesn't. In fact, the weirdest thing about this was the fact that no one else in the room spoke up, except for me. I turned to the technician and I said, "Why does it matter?" "Well, I think he can only speak Spanish." I know, right? So, being clever, I say, "That's fascinating. When I interviewed him, I could understand him perfectly. In fact, if he disclosed that he speaks Spanish to you, wouldn't that be a benefit? I mean, we have people in Texas that buy our products. We have people in actual Mexico, because it was an international company." And I was like, "That's fantastic if he speaks Spanish." I got all excited. And I talked about all the positive things this candidate could bring to our organization. And what it did was it made that person think, wow, what I said was probably wrong in his head. Because I could tell when he said it and when I started saying all the good things about why Spanish matters and why it's important. And then others in the group, now again, they were quiet until now, they started to chime up and said, "This is a great idea. I love the idea that we are getting a technician that's Spanish speaking." Juan never knew. I, of course, never told him about this. It would be too embarrassing. I was embarrassed that this other technician said that. My hope and goal is that not only did I help Juan try and get that job by being an advocate in the room, but I also helped that person understand that he needs to think about the positives of diversity and include that technician in as a value add to his team. I will leave you with that, and I'm sure that all of you have at least one, if not multiple stories behind your industry and some of the experiences either you've seen or experienced yourself. But I'm going to hand it over to Andrew because we're going to do the breakouts, and all of you are probably going to talk about your different cultural experiences and in your industries as well. Thank you so much for having me, and back to you, Andrew.